All right, so I put out this poll on my YouTube community tab yesterday saying, if starting a business is something you'd like to do, what is stopping you? And we had 193 comments. The highest voted comment was from Gonzalo, who said, honestly, not having good ideas and fear of wasting time and money on a bad idea. I think what this comment speaks to is that there are various myths that people believe about starting a business. And in this video, I would like to share my perspective on each of these different myths. Thank you so much, Adobe Express, for sponsoring this video. And by the way, if we haven't yet met, my name is Ali and I've been doing this online business thing for over 10 years. I built and sold my first six-figure business while I was a medical student at Cambridge. I built my next business to six figures while working full-time as a doctor. And a few years ago, I was able to quit the day job to focus on the business, which now generates 7 figures a year in profit and lets me live a life that I absolutely love. The key thing to remember with all of that stuff though is that this sort of journey to having a sort of multi-million-dollar lifestyle business did not happen overnight, and there were loads and loads of failures along the way. And so this is the video that I wish I would have had when I was early on in my entrepreneurial journey. And let's start with myth number 1. And the first myth that I would like to debunk for your consideration is that you need a good idea to start a business. This is actually a little bit of a myth. You don't really need a good idea to start a business. You just need any idea to start a business. One of my core beliefs as it relates to business is that for most people, your first 3 businesses are very likely to fail. And that is a good thing, because those 3 failed businesses will teach you the skills of how to actually build a business. You learn business by creating a business and by attempting to make it work, rather than by watching loads of videos, watching loads of courses, attending business school, having a corporate job. These things, they work to some degree, but they don't really teach you the nuts and bolts of how to actually build a business. It's sort of like riding a bike. You could read all the books you like about riding a bike. You could watch all the videos you want about riding a bike. But unless you actually sit on a bike and try and pedal and realize, oh, okay, you fall off a bunch of times, and then eventually you'll learn how to ride a bike. That is the only real way of learning how to ride a bike. It's the same thing in business. There is this misconception that you need to have a good idea to get started, that the bar for an idea is here. But there's a good quote that I really like from entrepreneur James Altucher, which is that if you can't come up with 10 business ideas, forget about coming up with 10 and instead come up with 20 business ideas. Like for example, you watching this right now, I'm imagining if you're watching this video that you actually want to start a business and there are various obstacles that are holding you back. And so if I were to ask you, hey, what's your best business idea? You might be like, I don't know, because the bar is so high. But if I were to say, okay, your job in the next 10 minutes is to come up with 50 business ideas, suddenly the bar gets lower and lower. You might think, oh my goodness, I couldn't possibly come up with 50 business ideas in 5 minutes, or whatever the thing might be. But if we imagine a thought experiment, if you had a gun to your head, had to come up with 50 business ideas, they could be as bad as you wanted them to be. You just had to come up with 50 of them in the next 10 minutes. You'd probably find a way to come up with 50 business ideas. All that matters is that we've reduced the bar for quality, the bar for what is a good idea. Because in a world where we know that our first 3 businesses are probably going to fail, we don't really need to start off with a good idea. In fact, it's probably best to not start with a very good idea, because you can save that for when you actually know the skill of starting a business. Now, at the point where you have some business ideas to share, then you might like to check out this completely free business planning template that I've created in partnership with the wonderful team at Adobe Express, who are kindly sponsoring this video. And you can check out this template completely free by clicking on the link in the video description. And this template walks you through the kind of stuff that I would personally recommend you think about as it relates to starting your own business. So we've got this slide, which is the basic business idea template, and you can duplicate this multiple times for various different business ideas. We're focusing on step 1, who is the target customer for the business? Step 2, what problem is your business solving? And step 3, where are you going to find 10 target customers to potentially pay you for your business idea? Once you've come up with a few business ideas using this format, you can then dive into the more detailed section of the template. So we've got this slide, which is specifically about the problem statement. We've got a few prompts around the solution. We've got a few prompts around the target market. And here I'm holding up Alex Hormozy's wonderful book, $100 Million Leads, which is also very, very good, that you should read if you haven't read it already. We've got some prompts around your unfair advantage. Like, what is it that gives you personally an edge in the space? And then when you're ready to take action, we've got this now, not how slide, which is terminology from my friend Noah Kagan's wonderful book, $1 Million Weekend. And that asks things like, what is the fastest way to test if someone will pay for this? And what is the simplest version of the solution that you can test? For example, it might be something as simple as sending a WhatsApp message to 10 of my friends and asking if they'd be willing to pay $1 to try the service out. There is really something magical about getting that first customer, getting that first person to actually give you real money for the thing. And a common mistake people make is trying to make too much money right at the beginning. Again, your first 3 business ideas are probably going to fail, but they're probably going to fail because you haven't found a way to validate demand. And so we are really trying to optimize for speed here. What is the fastest way to test if someone will pay for this? There's also a very helpful slide here, which is the crystal ball method that I also also talk about in my book. But the idea here is that you imagine it's 3 months from now. What are the top 3 reasons why this business that you're starting doesn't go to plan? And what actions can you take to mitigate against each of these risks? Then we have a slide for your distribution strategy, your annual goals as it relates to your business using my GPS method, your quarterly quests, so an action plan you can make over the next 90 days. And then if you like, you can also use the weekly project part of the template to take action week on week. So let's start with the first business idea. And again, this is the sort of stuff that I would actually be thinking about if I were trying to start a new business. And in terms of coming up with a business idea, we want to start with a problem statement. So people struggle with problem. My business idea is to help them by ... And we want to try and figure out like, okay, that is the format of a business idea. And what's interesting is you'll notice that people comes first. Step 1 is the who. I think a big mistake that people make when it comes to business ideas is that they focus on the what or the how rather than the who. But a business is not a business unless you've got customers that are willing to pay for it. And so that's why we start with the who. So for me, business idea number 1 might be a freelance video editing service. Now my people are, let's say, YouTubers. I'm going to say YouTubers struggle with editing taking too much time. This is my problem. My business idea is to help them by offering an affordable, efficient video editing service so that they can focus on content creation. And the so that they can bit is also quite important here because it's not just about the feature, but it's also about the benefit it provides your customer. So fleshing this out a little bit, who's the target customer for this business idea? And so that might be small YouTubers under 50K subs who want to grow but don't have time to edit their own videos. Well, the problem it's solving is the struggle of videos taking way too long to edit and eating up the time they could be spending making more content or just having a life outside of YouTube. And then where are we going to find 10 of these target customers to talk to about our business idea? And so that could be through reaching out to small YouTubers via DMs on Twitter or Instagram or email, or posting in YouTube related Facebook groups, or browsing r/YouTubers on Reddit and offering free sample edits, like whatever that thing might be. And this would be, for example, business idea number 1. This example of a local dog walking service could be business idea number 2. And this, for example, might be business idea number 3, which is an Airbnb cleaning and management service. This template is based on the colors and the vibe of Feel Good Productivity, which is my book, but you can of course like customize this template to your heart's desire based on your own vibe or your own branding or just your own creativity. For example, I could create a new brand kit, which is a premium feature. I can then select whatever fonts I want, and then I can hit apply brand and it'll apply those brand guidelines to my template if that's what I want to do. And if I wanted to, I could even use some of the generative AI features. So in this case, I could generate an image of happy dogs being walked by an enterprising young man. And here we go. We've got a nice cute image for our dog walking service. And so if you're using a template like this just for your own personal brainstorming, it's just kind of fun to have some images, but you can see the value of using something like Adobe Express if you're creating slideshows or pitch decks or brochures or anything like that. Anyway, if you want to use this Adobe Express template for your own business ideas, then check out the link below and you can use it completely for free. So thank you so much, Adobe Express, for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to it. Relatedly, Gonzalo's point was also the fear of wasting time and money on a bad idea. And that relates to myth number 2 that I would love to offer for your consideration, which is that time spent on a business that fails is time wasted. This is actually a myth because, for example, it would be like saying, man, it was such a waste of time those first few times I rode a bicycle because I fell off. What a waste of time. Oh my goodness, I never want to do that again. But that's not how it works, right? The fact that you fell off the bike the first few times you tried it was an investment of time that you needed to invest in order to learn the skills of riding said bike. And so really, I can understand where the fear comes from of like, oh my God, I've got a job already, I've got all these things to do, and I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste money. I don't want to waste effort. But every single thing that's an investment looks like a waste of time and effort and money at the start, especially if the outcome of that thing is particularly uncertain. And that's the thing with business. I think school teaches us to aim for certainty. Like, hey, these are the things that you have to follow in order to get an A grade or whatever the thing might be. If you get this number of requirements of A grades, then you're going to be able to get into a university. If you follow that curriculum at the university and tick these boxes, then ... will happen. And we grow up in this mindset of like, I will only do something if I have a certainty of the outcome on the other side. This is why often parents will say things like, don't do a degree in music because like your chances of landing a job are a lot less. Why don't you do a degree in accounting and finance instead? Because your chances of landing a job in accounting and finance are greater. And unless you have particularly entrepreneurial parents, if your parents are entrepreneurs, they wouldn't be saying that at all. Most parents are not entrepreneurs. Most of the people around us are not entrepreneurs. And so the default water that we as fish swim in is the water of, I must optimize for certainty. Now, there's an important caveat here in that there are some people in the world who do need to optimize for financial certainty and financial security. If, for example, you have bills to pay, you have a family to feed, you have a mortgage, etc., and you need the financial certainty and financial security in order to put bread on the table for your children, in that world, it makes a lot of rational sense to optimize for certainty and financial security. And then maybe in that world, starting your own business might not necessarily make sense. Even in that world, to be honest, I would argue that like, unless, for example, you're a doctor where you can basically guarantee employment for your whole life, a lot of jobs are being disrupted. AI is sort of taking over a lot of things. You actually, I would argue, in a lot of instances would have more financial security if you start your own business and take your economic engine into your own hands rather than expecting it to be handed to you by an employer. But all that said, I understand that there is a world in which some people genuinely are optimizing for financial security. But the reason I'm saying this is because the thing that I see in a lot of people I know, a lot of people I speak to in talks, a lot of my friends who want to start businesses but who are afraid to start businesses is that they are overestimating the degree of financial security they actually need. They're often not on the poverty line where not making that next paycheck means that the kids are going to starve. They're often in a far more privileged situation than that. And yet they are operating from this place of like, oh my God, I need certainty, I need security. And again, it's usually not a money thing. It's usually there's some sort of emotional fear and scarcity underneath that desire to be financially secure. All of that said, it comes back to this myth that time spent on a business that fails is time wasted. It's a myth. If we know that our first 3 businesses are probably going to fail, my first 6 businesses failed before I built a business that was successful, but I needed those 6 failures to learn the ropes a little bit. I needed to fall off the bike a handful of times before I could actually build something that worked. And all of those failures were not in fact failures. They were not wasted time. They weren't even wasted money, even though I didn't spend that much money on them. They were learning opportunities. They were a chance for me to invest in boosting my own skills. And that brings us on to the third part of Gonzalo's comment, which is the fear of wasting money on a bad idea. And that brings us on to myth number 3, which is that you need to spend money to start your first business. This is again a myth of entrepreneurship and a myth of business that we've been taught. If you watch TV shows like Dragon's Den or Shark Tank or things like that, you will get all these entrepreneurs who are rocking up asking for investment in their business. And so when someone thinks entrepreneur or someone thinks business, they think, oh my goodness, I need an investor, I need cash, I need capital in order to start the business. And I think a big reason for this is that when most people think of the word business, they actually think of a product business rather than a service business. So if you look on Dragon's Den, all of these TV shows where people are coming to entrepreneurs and pitching their idea, it's almost never a service that they're pitching. They're not saying, hey, I've got a web design studio, or I'm a freelance accountant and I do the accounting for small businesses in my local area. That is not sexy. That's really boring. It's not glamorous. It's not going to do well on TV. It's also the sort of business that doesn't need investment. The entrepreneurs that go on these TV shows are the ones who are building some innovative new product. Oh, I've built this new massage gun. Oh, I've built this new blanket. Oh, I've built this new hot sauce. These are product businesses. They are building a physical thing usually. And yes, those usually do require capital. They usually require investment. And that's why they're on this TV show, to try and pitch to investors. But for the most part, business is this absolutely enormous thing. And in my opinion, and in the opinion of a lot of entrepreneurs that I speak to, your first business should not be a product business. Instead, your first business should be a service business. It's when you are selling your time and your skills rather than you are trying to build a product. And there are plenty of service businesses you can start without actually having to spend any money at all. You are simply investing time. And let's do a little thought experiment here. Let's say you are 14 years old and it is the summer holidays. Think back to when it was the summer holidays when you were 14 and you were like, man, I've got to find a way to make some money. What might you as a 14-year-old think to do to make some money? You probably wouldn't be thinking, damn, I really need some capital to hire some developers to build an app. You probably wouldn't be thinking, damn, I really need some startup money to be able to invent this new product. You'd probably be thinking, can I go and knock on local houses and offer to mow their lawns? That is a service business. It doesn't cost me as a 14-year-old anything to knock on different people's doors and say, hey, I noticed that your grass is a little bit overgrown. Have you got a lawnmower? Yeah, great, fantastic. Do you want to pay me $5, $10 to mow your lawn for you? They'll probably be like, yeah, sure. 14-year-old, kind of cute. Why not? I don't want to mow the lawn myself. I'm therefore paying for someone else to do it for me. This is a service business. Let's say that 14-year-old then gets a little bit older. This is what I did when I was like 16, 17. I started offering private tutoring services to parents in my local area. It did not cost me any money to private tutor someone in their maths or English or science GCSE exams. I just advertised my services on a website called UK Tutors and I got a couple of clients that way. And so again, I wasn't investing any money to start that business. It was a service-based business where I was going around people's houses and tutoring the kids in how to pass their GCSE physics exam. That is a service-based business. And if I look through this community post, there are so many responses from people saying that the one thing that's stopping them from starting a business is capital. And that would only be true if the first business you want to start requires intensive startup capital. But there are plenty of businesses, as we just talked about, that you can start that don't require any of that capital. The 14-year-old version of you might be mowing lawns. The 17-year-old version of you might be doing private tutoring. The university grad version of you who did a degree in finance might be able to, become like a financial controller for small businesses. Again, offering a service to small businesses who will pay you for the service, and all you need is a computer with an internet connection. You do not need money to start your first business. In fact, I would recommend that for your first couple of businesses, you start businesses that do not require startup capital. Let's talk about myth number 4, which comes up a lot in these comments as well, which is the myth that you need to go all in to start your first business. There is a comment from Ekath S1 who says, the thing that's stopping me is money, of course. If I'd secured 2 years of my expenses, I would start right now. They're saying, Matt, the only thing that's stopping me is I just don't have 2 years worth of living expenses in the bank. If I just had those in the bank, then of course I would start my business. That is also fear. It's fear disguised as what looks like a practical concern about money. Because broadly, for the most part, for your first business, I wouldn't recommend you quit your job to start your business. I would recommend doing it on the side as a bit of a side hustle. Do it for 20 minutes a day, half an hour a day. Do it in wake up 20 minutes early and work on that business for the first 20 minutes of the day. If you have a corporate job, you're probably not working flat out for all like 8, 9, 10 hours of the day. You could probably take a shorter lunch break if you really wanted to work on that business. You could probably wake up a little bit earlier on a Saturday morning. So you've still got all weekend to like hang out with the family, but you could put in 2 hours in the morning on a Saturday and a Sunday morning while no one else is awake, because the point of your first business is to learn, not to earn. And with that law that like the first 3 businesses are probably going to fail, you want to get the failures under your belt pretty quickly. And you don't need to quit your job and go all in working 60 hours a week on your first business in order to rack up the failures and to rack up the skill points that you're gaining through trying out these different businesses. In fact, for many people, doing their businesses in the context of having a day job, it makes it way easier because now you don't need to make all the money from it straight away. You're not dipping into your savings. You're not like having to worry about not being able to pay the mortgage because you haven't got money coming in from this new venture. You're just starting it on the side. You're learning the skills and slowly trying to make money a little bit at a time. I think another big myth that relates to all of this stuff is the myth that your first business needs to give you everything. I think a misconception a lot of people have is that, when I start that business, that's the business that's going to make me financially free. It's the business that's going to be fun because I'm going to be doing something I'm passionate about. It's the business that's going to feel fulfilling because I'm making a difference in the world. It's a business that's going to give me time freedom and location freedom. I'll be able to work with people I love, wherever I love, being able to do whatever I want. There's all this list of things. Of course, if you have a 6 or 7 figure lifestyle business like I do, you have a lot of those things taken care of. But this business that I've got is not my first business. There's almost no entrepreneur I have ever met who has succeeded with their first business. Usually, the first business is something really boring. It's something you're not particularly excited about. It's something that you really, really, really struggle with, but it's something that helps you learn the skills and helps you make a little bit of money. And eventually, when you get to the point of like after a couple of businesses, you get to the point where you're able to make money in a way that's decorrelated with your time. That tends to be the first major unlock because now you've unlocked freedom from the 9 to 5, freedom from the corporate job. And so once you've secured that economic engine, at that point, you can start thinking, okay, cool. What business am I really passionate about? What's a business that like will really make a difference in the world? But if you're trying to have all of these different expectations for your very first business, that's like saying, I don't know, it's like in the dating world, you're like, you know what? I'm not even going to go on a first date unless I can guarantee that that person is going to be the person I marry. They're also going to end up being my business partner. They're also going to end up being my therapist. It's like you've got all of these unrealistic expectations that's stopping you from even going out on that first date. Whereas everyone knows that like, you meet a bunch of people, you go on a few dates, you see what you like, you see what you don't like, you see who you vibe with. Probably the first person you're in a relationship with is not the person you're going to end up marrying on average for most people. In the same way, most people don't end up doing the first business that they start for the rest of their lives. And I think a lot of these people in the comments, people who are afraid to start the first business, are just putting way too much expectation on it. My very first business was doing freelance web design when I was like 13 years old. My next business was trying to build a shitty website that was sort of a pyramid multi-level marketing scheme back when I was like 14, 15 years old. The business after that was this private tutoring stuff where I was making like $100 a week. I tried building a business when I was in school that was helping teenagers learn like spy skills like lockpicking and like martial arts on some online forum that completely flopped. Then when I got into med school, I built a business that was helping other people get into med school and that worked reasonably well. I tried a bunch of other different business ideas. Some of them are even documented on my YouTube channel. I tried building an app early on back in 2017, completely flopped. Even within the context of my current business, there are so many things that we've tried that haven't really worked. And if me or any of my entrepreneur friends had that idea at the start that like, man, this first business I start, it's got to work. It's got to have certainty. It's got to give me all the money, the fun, the freedom, the flexibility, the fulfillment. It's got to be meaningful, blah, 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 all of that kind of stuff. We just never would have gotten started at all. And we'd still be working in corporate jobs and being really scared that AI is going to be disrupting the whole thing. So really, if there is one message in this video, then that message is, if you've been wanting to start a business, but you haven't yet, I suspect your bar is too high. You just got to lower the bar, man. You just got to think that your first 3 businesses are probably going to fail. In the same vein as when I started a YouTube channel, it's helpful to have the rule that my first 50 videos are going to be terrible, but that's okay because in the process of making those first 50 videos, I will learn the art and the science and the skills of video making so that maybe video number 51 will finally be worth someone's time to watch. In the same vein, it's very useful to have the mental model that my first 3 businesses are going to fail. And the point of those businesses is to teach me the skills of entrepreneurship so that when I actually have a good idea, I'm able to actually execute on that idea. Because you can have the best idea in the world right now, but unless you've started a business, it's probably not going to work. Various people had the idea for Uber. You probably thought 10, 15, 20 years ago, they're like, man, it's kind of annoying that I have to call up a taxi and, whatever. I wish I could just order a taxi from my phone. That's a pretty good idea, but like loads and loads and loads and loads of people had that idea. Ideas are a dime a dozen. The idea is not the thing that stops your business from starting. It's the execution. And the thing that's stopping the execution is the fact that you just haven't done it before. The more you do it, the more you get on that bike and fall off, the more you realize what it feels like to ride a bike, the more you realize what it feels like to start and grow your own business. And eventually you might get to the point 15 years later into that journey where people are then asking you for advice, and you'll see all of these different obstacles that are holding people up. You'll see all these people around you saying, oh man, I don't have enough money to start. Oh, there's too much competition in the market. Oh, I'm just like, it's like all of these different excuses, and you'll recognize where they're coming from, because you'll see yourself in those excuses, and you'll be so glad that you took those first steps to start that first business despite not having certainty. This whole game of business is a game of being comfortable with uncertainty and being comfortable with discomfort. We are so addicted to certainty. We're so addicted to making sure that if I'm only gonna do that thing if it's getting me points on my CV further down the line. We're so addicted to that we just don't take the interesting risks and do the interesting things where there's some amount of uncertainty. Going on a date is always a little bit uncertain. Trying a new hobby is always a little bit uncertain. Starting a business is always a little bit uncertain. But if you can get through that uncertainty, if you can be comfortable with it, if you can surf the wave of the uncertainty, that is where the learning is happening. And that's where you build up the skills that no one else is building up because they're too afraid of taking that first step. And just as a reminder, you've got the totally free Adobe Express template that you can download that gives you all of the prompts that I would recommend when it comes to thinking about your first couple of business ideas. If you've gotten value from this video, then you might like to check out this video over here, which is my honest advice to someone who wants financial freedom. And that is a conversation I had with a friend of mine that sort of touches on similar themes, but you might find that interesting. And there's a bunch of different book and podcast recommendations in that video as well. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.